Iran had been building its nuclear program for over 20 years. Israel watched, waited, and did nothing. So why now? Why this moment? And what does Israel know that we don't? Here's the thing nobody is asking. The attack didn't happen because Iran crossed a red line. At least, not the red line everyone thinks. Something else changed. Something quieter. Something that started not in Tehran, but in a place most people aren't even looking. We'll get to that. But first, you need to understand the 40-year chess match that brought us here. Israel and Iran have been locked in a shadow war for decades. Assassinated scientists, sabotaged centrifuges, cyber attacks, proxy conflicts across Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Gaza. Billions of dollars, thousands of lives. But direct strikes? Israel had always stopped just short. That changed. In a coordinated series of strikes, Israel hit Iranian military infrastructure, air defense systems, missile production sites, and, according to multiple intelligence sources, targets connected to Iran's nuclear supply chain. The world held its breath, and the question everyone was asking was, why now? On the surface, the official explanation sounds clean. Iran crossed a threshold. Iran launched direct ballistic missile attacks on Israeli soil twice. Israel responded. That's the logic. But here's where it gets strange. Iran had been crossing thresholds for years. Proxy attacks through Hezbollah, drone swarms from Yemeni Houthis, weapons pipelines running through Iraq and Syria. And every time Israel responded, but with measured precision. Targeted strikes, calibrated retaliation. Nothing like this. So what actually changed? Because if you zoom out, really zoom out, the timing lines up with something far bigger than a missile exchange. Some analysts believe Israel wasn't just responding to Iran. Israel was watching a window, and that window was closing fast. Let's talk about that window.
For years, Israel's biggest constraint wasn't capability. Israel has the most advanced military in the region. It has Iron Dome. It has the F-35. It has intelligence networks so deep, they placed an assassin inside Iran's most protected facility. The constraint was permission. Not legal permission, political permission. The kind that comes from Washington. And here's the thing. Washington's position has been shifting. Quietly, slowly, but unmistakably. For the past 2 decades, U.S. administrations, regardless of party, consistently urged restraint, back-channel negotiations, diplomatic frameworks, the Iran nuclear deal. All of it rested on one unspoken premise. Don't light the match. But something doesn't add up. Because in the months leading up to the strikes, American restraint started sounding different, less urgent, more conditional. Was the green light finally given? Or did Israel simply stop waiting for one? Now here's where the pattern starts to emerge. Look at the sequence of events, not as isolated moments, but as a timeline. Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023. Israel invades Gaza. Hezbollah escalates in the north. Iran launches direct missile attacks on Israeli soil, something that hadn't happened in modern history. Then a second wave. Then Israel neutralizes Hezbollah's leadership. Then Iran's air defense grid starts looking vulnerable. Each step didn't just escalate the conflict. Each step removed a layer of deterrence that had protected Iran for decades. Iran's most powerful card was always Hezbollah. 100,000 missiles pointed at Israel, a human shield wrapped in geopolitical leverage. That card got weaker.
fast. And here's the detail that changes everything. Iran's nuclear program had reportedly passed a specific enrichment benchmark. Not quite a weapon, but close enough that the gap was now measured in weeks, not years.
Some analysts believe that threshold, combined with a degraded deterrence network, created a window that Israel calculated would never be this wide again. The implications go well beyond the Middle East. The oil market felt it immediately. Brent crude spiked. Shipping insurance rates in the Gulf of Oman surged overnight. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply flows, became the single most watched body of water on the planet. Russia and China watched carefully. Both nations have significant economic and strategic interests tied to Iran. A destabilized Iran reshapes energy markets, shifts regional alliances, and creates pressure points that reach all the way to Moscow and Beijing. The Gulf states went quiet. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, countries that have spent years quietly normalizing relations with Israel while publicly maintaining distance, suddenly had to choose how loudly to say nothing. And NATO allies faced a familiar dilemma: condemn, support, abstain. The fracture lines within Western alliances became visible again, just as they had during Gaza. The strike didn't just hit Iranian soil. It sent a signal to every power that had been calculating the cost of challenging the existing regional order. But here's the perspective almost no one is talking about. What if this wasn't primarily about Iran's nuclear program at all? What if the nuclear threat was the justification, not the reason? Consider this angle. Israel has been watching something shift in the broader Middle East landscape. The Abraham Accords brought Arab states into quiet cooperation with Israel. Saudi-Israeli normalization was on the table. A new regional architecture was being quietly constructed, one that isolated Iran economically and diplomatically. And Iran knew it. Some analysts believe Iran's escalation wasn't just military. It was an attempt to fracture that emerging architecture, to force Arab states back into an anti-Israel position, to make normalization politically impossible. If that's true, then Israel's strikes weren't just a military response. They were a strategic message. The new architecture holds, and we will defend it. This raises a question no one can fully answer yet. Was Iran trying to blow up a peace process, and did Israel's response just cement it instead? There are at least three ways to read what just happened. The official explanation: Iran's direct missile attacks on Israeli soil, twice, crossed an irreversible line. Israel exercised its right to self-defense, targeting military and nuclear infrastructure to degrade Iran's offensive capacity. The timing reflects a calculated response to accumulated provocations, not a premeditated strike. The alternative explanation: the strikes were not reactive. They were strategic and preemptive. Israel identified a narrowing window created by a weakened Hezbollah, a vulnerable Iranian air defense grid, and a nuclear enrichment timeline that made waiting more dangerous than acting. The missile attacks provided political cover for a decision that had already been made.
We have confirmed weapons
The deeper
deployment.
geopolitical interpretation. This was less about Iran's missiles and more about the future map of the Middle East. The strikes were a defining statement about who controls the regional security architecture. They were directed at Tehran, but the real audience was Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Beijing, and Washington. Israel was drawing a line, not just on a map, but in the calculation of every power watching from the outside. Which of these is true? It's possible all three are, partially. Because in geopolitics, the stated reason and the real reason are almost never the same thing. And the full reason is almost never singular. And that brings us to the part that should concern you most. Not what happened. What comes next? Here's what we know. Iran is damaged, but not destroyed.
Its nuclear program has been set back, but by how much, nobody publicly agrees. Its air defense network has been exposed. Its proxies are weaker than they've been in 2 decades. But Iran is still there. And history suggests that when a nation is humiliated, especially one with a deep sense of civilizational pride, it doesn't retreat quietly. It recalculates. So here's the question nobody can answer right now. Did Israel just eliminate the threat? Or did it just start the next phase of something far larger? Because the one thing every analyst on every side agrees on is this. The Middle East that existed before these strikes is gone. What replaces it, nobody knows. And the decisions being made in the next 60 days, in rooms we'll never see, by people we'll never hear from, could determine whether this was the moment the fire was put out, or the moment it spread. If you made it this far, drop a comment. Do you think this stabilizes the region or accelerates towards something bigger? Because the answer matters more than most people realize. Would you like me to adjust the pacing, add specific historical references, or create a version with timestamps and B-roll suggestions for your editor?